They blocked my own gate, 6 a.m. I'm staring at a giant private property, HOA sign across my ranch entrance, land my family's owned. Since 1952, these HOA tyrants thought they could steal my road with some fake legal papers. Oh, they picked the wrong cowboy. Drop a comment where you're watching from if you've ever dealt with HOA bullies. Because what I did next, building a fence that trapped 45 families on their own street, became the most legendary revenge in HOA history. Buckle up. I called Sheriff Tom Bradley immediately. "There's something strange blocking my ranch gate," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. 20 minutes later, Tom pulled up in his cruiser, took one look at the sign, and shook his head. "Mark the HOA claims. They've acquired ownership of this access road," he said, looking uncomfortable. "Acquired from who exactly?" "This has been Sullivan land since 1952. That's when Patricia Henderson rolled up in her pink Tesla designer sunglasses, perched on her nose, clutching a stack of papers like she was serving a court summons. "Mr. Sullivan," she announced, her voice dripping with false sweetness according to Section 15.3 of the HOA covenant, which you never signed, by the way. "We have the right to manage all shared access roads." I felt my blood pressure rising. "But I'm not even in your HOA, I protested. "Irrelevant," she dismissed with a wave. "We've been using this road for 10 years. That makes it ours through squatters' rights. The law is very clear on this." That's when my neighbor Jake Morrison started live streaming from his property. "Line squatters' rights, really?" Jake called out his phone, capturing everything. "So you're telling me you're basically Christopher Columbusing Mark's ranch?" That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Jake had moved here from San Francisco 2 years ago, trading his tech job for food blogging and a quieter life. Within minutes, his stream had attracted thousands of viewers who were eating up the drama. "Guys you see in this," Jake narrated dramatically, "we've got a real-life HOA, Karen trying to steal a cowboy's land. Chat is going wild. Comments flooded in, faster than anyone could read. Patricia noticed the phone, and her face darkened. "Turn that off immediately, you're violating my privacy." Jake laughed. "Man, we're on a public road." "Well, actually, apparently it's Mark's private road, so technically you're the one violating here." Several neighbors had started gathering some filming with their own phones. Patricia's composed facade was cracking as she realized this was spiraling beyond her control. Patricia's face reened. "Mr. Sullivan lacks any written agreement for exclusive use. We, however, have documentation." She waved that stack of papers again like it was a winning lottery ticket. I remembered her visit 3 months earlier when she'd shown up with her overpriced coffee, surveying my land like she was already planning where to put the swimming pool. "Mark, this place is so outdated." She'd said, "I'll give you 300,000 cash. I could transform this into luxury estates." The land was worth 1.5 million, and we both knew it. That's not even close to market value. I told her. Well, she'd smirked. "Things might get complicated if you don't cooperate. The HOA has very strict regulations, you know." Now here, I was forced to park on the highway and haul 20, 50 lb bags of cattle feed 200 men on foot because some power-hungry HOA president decided my grandfather's gate was suddenly her property. Jake kept streaming, narrating the whole ridiculous scene. "Folks, my neighbor just got locked out of his own ranch. The HOA president here thinks she's Miranda Priestley from The Devil Wears Prada." His viewer count was climbing fast. 10,000 people watching in real time after I'd finally hauled all the feed to the barn, sweating and cursing under my breath. Jake pulled me aside. "Bro, you need to check your property deed. Like, immediately, trust me on this," something in his expression
made me pay attention. I went straight to my grandfather's old safe, pulled out the original land survey from 1952 and spread it across my kitchen table. My hands started shaking as I traced the property lines with my finger. I remember the day.
Grandpa showed me this exact map, his weathered finger following the same lines. "See this, Marcus," he'd said, sitting me on his knee when I was just 8 years old. "This paper is more than just property lines, it's freedom. Our family bought this land fair and square, and nobody can
Take it unless we let them. That's why we keep the originals in the safe. Not some banks fail, governments change, but this land, this is Sullivan land forever. He'd made me trace the boundaries with my own small finger, memorizing every curve. And Corner promised me he'd said his voice. Serious promise you'll never let anyone steal what we've built now. 34 years later, his words rang in my ears like a battle cry. The revelation hit me like a lightning bolt. Not only did I own the gate area,
but the entire access road that Silverstone Estates had been using for the past decade, all 300 banners of it, was clearly within my property boundaries. The surveyor's seal and notary stamps were still visible, making it indisputable every single car that drove to those 45 houses was technically trespassing. On Sullivan land, Patricia Henderson had made a critical error in her research, and she just declared war on the wrong rancher. I picked up my phone, my voice deadly, calm as Jake answered. "Remember those contractors you mentioned last week, the ones who do emergency fence installation?" I asked. "Yeah, why?" Jake replied, though I could hear the grin in his voice. "Call every single one of them. I need 300 meters of fence installed tonight."
"And make sure they bring the tallest posts they've got." I paused, then added, "Oh, and Jake, print 45 copies of a trespassing notice. We're going to do this completely by the book." Jake let out a low whistle. "Bro, what exactly are you planning?" I looked
back at my grandfather's deed, remembering his words about protecting our legacy. "They want to play property games," I said, feeling a smile spread across my face. For the first time all day, they just met the final boss at 3 in the morning. I personally taped certified notices to every single door in Silverstone Estates. The message was simple, but legally bulletproof notice. Sullivan Ranch will be installing property boundary fencing beginning at 4 a.m. Please remove all vehicles from private property. You have been formally notified. I'd actually sent certified mail 48 hours earlier and posted notices at 6 the previous evening. But I wanted to make absolutely sure everyone was warned by 15 workers, and 3 trucks loaded with steel posts were ready to go. I stood there with my coffee looking at that public property sign the HOA had put on my gate and smiled. "Two can play this game," I muttered. Jake was already streaming, practically bouncing with excitement. "Family, remember how the HOA blocked my neighbor's gate? Well, look what he's doing now." His viewer count shot past 50,000 and kept climbing. The fence went up with remarkable efficiency by 5 in the morning. Steel posts were being driven into the ground along the exact property line my grandfather had established 70 years ago. I noticed David Reynolds, one of the HOA board members, standing in his bathrobe on his lawn, quietly recording everything on his phone. He didn't say anything, just watched, and filmed by 6 residents started waking up for their morning commute. The first car reached what used to be their exit at 6:30, only to find the road completely blocked by brand new chain-link fencing. I heard the driver's shocked expletive from 100 yards away. Then came the domino effect. One car after another, lining up, horns blaring, until all 45 households were trapped behind my perfectly legal fence. I had positioned myself on my side of the fence with my own new sign, Premier, Property Sullivan Ranch, no trespassing. The chaos that erupted was something to behold. Parents were screaming about getting to work, kids were crying in back seats, and at least 5 people were on their phones calling 911. That's when Patricia Henderson appeared in her silk pajamas, having apparently been at a friend's house overnight, and now unable to get back to her own home. Her pink Tesla sat uselessly on the wrong side of my fence. "Sullivan, open this gate immediately!"
as she shrieked, her face turning purple. "Open what gate?" I asked calmly. "This is my private property, just like you taught me. Funny how property rights work. Both ways, isn't it?" She was practically spitting with rage. "We have easement rights. We've
"Been using this road for 40 years written agreement," I inquired, sipping my coffee, "because you just told me yesterday that verbal agreements don't count, or does that only apply when it's convenient for you?" Jake's live stream commentary was pure gold. "Folks, she's demanding road access rights. That's like demanding your neighbor's Wi-Fi password because you've been stealing it for years." Sheriff Bradley arrived with 5 patrol cars, clearly expecting a riot. He spent 30 minutes reviewing my paperwork, checking the property lines and reading the notices I'd posted. Finally, he turned to the crowd with a weary expression. "Mark's right, this is his land. There's no recorded easement, and he provided proper legal notice. I can't make him remove the fence." Patricia's voice went up another octave. "But 45 families are trapped. This is false imprisonment." Sheriff Bradley sighed.
"It's not false imprisonment if they can walk out, Patricia." She stared at him in horror. "Walk through 300 metres of field." Everyone turned to look at the path to freedom. My newly irrigated cattle pasture, now a muddy swamp from the morning watering. Patricia
Attempted to maintain her authority. "This is unacceptable. I have an entire team of lawyers in Denver. You'll be bankrupt by the time I'm done with you, Sullivan." I met her gaze steadily. "Good, they'll need the work after you can't afford to pay them." Anymore, what happened next became the stuff of internet legend. By 8 that morning, 45 professional adults in business suits, dresses, and designer shoes were trudging through ankle-deep mud to reach their cars parked on the highway. A man in Armani suits slipped and fell, face first, his phone disappearing into the muck. A woman in a pencil skirt wailed about her Louis Vuitton heels. The yellow Lamborghini that belonged to the HOA treasurer got stuck trying to drive across the field and had to be abandoned. Patricia, her silk pajamas now splattered with mud, mascara streaming down her face, tried to maintain order by screaming, "Stay calm," at people who were anything but calm. Jake provided running commentary like a sports announcer. Day 1 of the Mudwalk Marathon, folks. This is better than any reality show. The local news station arrived just in time to catch the procession of muddy professionals within hours. Silverstone mud crisis was trending online. The residents tried everything to breach my fence. On day 2, 3 different contractors showed up with cutting equipment, only to leave after I showed them my property papers and mentioned the word lawsuit. One particularly enterprising neighbor, a lawyer named Phillips, tried to claim the fence was a safety hazard. Sheriff Bradley shut that down quick. Its regulation height properly installed, and on his property, try again. They even pulled money to hire an emergency road construction crew to build a new exit through the back of the development. The crew took one look at the terrain. Solid rock on one side, protected wetlands on the other, and handed back the check. Unless you've got $1 million and 5 years for permits, you're stuck with the mud. The foreman told them the more desperate they became, the more they turned theirs.
Anger toward Patricia, "This is your fault," became the morning chorus as professionals trudged through mud in their dress shoes that evening. At 9, I heard the sound of heavy machinery looking out my window. I saw Patricia directing a crew with
an excavator trying to create a new road around my property. Jake was there, instantly streaming the whole operation family. Tesla. Karen is literally digging up Mark's land. Now that's when old Walter Briggs, who'd lived in the area for 80 years, started shouting, "Stop, you can't dig there, that's where they buried Confederate soldiers after the Battle of Willow Creek." The excavator operator immediately shut down his machine from the disturbed earth. The corner of what looked like an old gravestone was visible. The camera zoomed in on the barely legible text, "Confederate Graves, 1863. The construction crew exchanged nervous glances. The operator crossed himself. "I ain't digging up no soldier graves. My mama would tan my hide," when the metal detector one of the workers carried started beeping insistently across the entire proposed route, even Patricia's. Most loyal supporters looked uncomfortable. This wasn't just about property disputes anymore. This was about respecting the dead. I stood at a safe distance, sipping my evening coffee. Had I known about the graves, maybe my grandfather had mentioned, something about the old battlefield? The slight smile on my face suggested many things but proved nothing. I honestly had no idea about the cemetery, I told Jake, as he filmed everything for his daily update. But sometimes karma has perfect timing. My grandfather did tell stories about the old battle that happened here. Guess Patricia should have done more research before trying to dig up historical land. The rumor about the Confederate graves spread through Silverstone estates like wildfire. Within hours, residents were frantically Googling. Property records worried they'd been living above a cemetery all along. One developer who'd been interested in buying lots in the area immediately pulled out, citing public relations concerns. Patricia tried desperately to shift blame. Sullivan planted that story. He's trying to destroy our community. She ranted at an emergency HOA meeting. I simply shrugged. When asked about it all, I did was suggest, "Jake, check the county historical records. They're
Public information. Not my fault if Patricia didn't do her homework. Old Mrs. Martinez suddenly remembered her grandmother's stories. Oh yes, there were soldiers buried all around here. My arbor said she could hear them marching on foggy nights. Another
elderly resident chimed in with his own tale. "My dad told me never to dig deep in this area. Said the dead don't like being disturbed, whether the stories were true or just old-timers having fun with the situation. The effect was immediate. Property values started wobbling. As potential buyers Googled Silverstone Estates, Confederate Cemetery, Jake's commentary was becoming more creative. By the day, family swamp queen here thinks she's the victim yesterday. She was Christopher Columbus today. She's claiming to be persecuted. Make it make sense by day 3 of what Jake had dubbed the Mudwalk Challenge. The residents were reaching their breaking point. The morning trek through my irrigated field had become a soul-crushing routine. Why?
Are we suffering because of Patricia's ego? Demanded Barbara Brooks, a pediatrician who'd been neutral until she lost her 3rd pair of shoes to the mud she started this war. Not Mark. Interestingly, some residents who'd initially blamed me were starting
to see the situation differently. After Tom Morrison actually read the property records at the courthouse, he came to apologize. "I'm sorry, Mark. I didn't realize the HOA had literally stolen your access road. Patricia told us you were just being difficult. 5 families approached me that afternoon with a proposal. We'll pay for legal road access, whatever you think is fair offered." James Wright speaking for the group. I pretended to consider it. Well, standard commercial easement rates would be about $1,000 per month per household. Their faces fell. Then I added, or if Patricia Henderson resigns as HOA president, I'd consider a neighborly rate of $100 per month. The seed of rebellion was planted that night. The 5 families met secretly at the White House. "We can't go on like this," James said. pouring coffee for everyone. My kids are asking why we have to walk through mud while Mrs. Henderson drives around in her Tesla. Barbara Brooks nodded vigorously. She started this war over nothing. Mark's not unreasonable. Did you hear his offer? A 100 red a month is nothing compared to what we're losing in dry cleaning alone. They agreed to approach me as a group, hoping there was safety in numbers against Patricia's inevitable retaliation. That evening, Patricia held a crisis meeting with her lawyers and a representative from Silverstone Shopping Plaza, LLC, the development company she'd been secretly working with. I knew about the meeting because David Reynolds, who'd been quietly documenting everything, had started feeding me information. If we can't use the road, we need another angle, Patricia told her team. What about water rights? Her lawyer reviewed the property documents carefully. There's an old provision about water access, the original well from the 1920s apparently, served multiple properties through an informal agreement. Patricia's eyes lit up with malicious glee. So if he blocks access to water, he's violating state law. The developer nodded eagerly. Do whatever it takes, we need. Sullivan gone, the longer this drags out, the more our investment deteriorates. Jake later explained this to his viewers in simpler terms. So Gucci Gremlin thinks she owns the water. Now what's next? Is she going to claim the air above Mark's ranch too? The next morning I woke up to find my cattle gathered around their water troughs, mooing in distress. The water in my well had turned black as oil. 200 gallons of septic waste had been dumped directly into my well system. During the night, a note was tied to the pump house. Oops, septic truck accidentally emptied in the wrong spot. By the way, blocking water access is illegal. Remove the fence, or we'll make sure your well is permanently unusable. Then that developer friend of mine can buy your worthless land for pennies. I stood there looking at my poisoned well, watching my 50-header cattle suffer from thirst. For 3 days I'd maintained my composure, treating this like a chess game. But as I watched a calf stumble from dehydration, something inside me snapped. This wasn't about property lines anymore. Patricia had just declared actual war, and she had no idea what she'd awakened. I pulled out my phone and made 2 calls. The first was to Jake. Turn off the stream. What happens next isn't for your viewers. My voice was different now, clipped and cold. The second call was more important. Federal Environmental Crime Unit. My name is Marcus Sullivan. I need to report an act of domestic terrorism. Someone has deliberately contaminated my water supply with human waste, killing livestock, and poisoning groundwater. Yes, I'll hold while waiting. I called my lawyer, Jennifer Martinez. Mark, what Patricia did crosses every line, deliberately poisoning a water source that serves at
livestock. That's agricultural terrorism. The feds don't mess around with that. If that contamination reaches the water table, we're talking about potential groundwater pollution affecting the entire county. She's looking at 20 years minimum. While I waited on hold, I looked at the security footage David Reynolds had sent me, clearly showing Patricia directing the septic truck at 3 in the morning. She thought she was being clever. She thought this was just another move in her property game. She was about to learn the difference between civil disputes and federal crimes. When I told the EPA about the contamination, I explained Jake's camera. 2 days later, I honestly didn't expect them to show up with hazmat suits and 10 federal vehicles. But I guess poisoning water supplies is something they take seriously. The Environmental Protection AY's response was swift and overwhelming. Within hours of my call, specialists in full protective gear were taking samples from my well. The lead investigator, a no-nonsense woman named Director Walsh, looked at the test results with growing alarm. This isn't just contamination, she announced. This is deliberate poisoning of a water source. That's not a neighbor dispute, folks. That's a federal crime.
but we needed proof of who ordered the poisoning. That's when David Reynolds stepped forward, pulling out an SD card. "I've been recording everything since this started," he said quietly. "I have video of Patricia Henderson directing that septic truck at 3x. She paid the driver in cash and specifically pointed to Mark's." Well, the footage was crystal clear. Even in the darkness, Patricia's face was unmistakable as she handed over a stack of bills and pointed directly at my well pump, the septic company. When confronted by federal agents, immediately cracked. Mrs. Henderson paid us $5,000 in cash. The driver confessed, said it was for a special disposal job. We knew it wasn't right, but she threatened to destroy our business if we refused Patricia's. Arrest happened in front of all 45 households. She tried to maintain her composure as agents led her away in handcuffs, but she stumbled on her own driveway, her perfectly styled blonde hair falling into her face. Jake, who'd resumed streaming after. I gave permission, provided commentary family. Toxic Barbie is doing the perp walk. This isn't HOA drama anymore. This is federal charges. The neighborhood split into camps after Patricia's arrest. Her loyalists, mostly the newer residents who'd bought. In expecting luxury, living insisted she was being railroaded. She's done so much for property values, argued Jennifer Polson, who'd moved in just 6 months ago. Mark's just a bitter old rancher who can't accept progress. But the longer-term residents
saw things differently. Property values don't mean anything if we're living in a police state, countered Robert Dale. A 10-year resident, Patricia's had this coming for years. Remember when she tried to find the Johnsons for their daughter's chalk?
drawings, the divisions were visible even in the mudwalks. Patricia supporters on one side, Mark sympathizers on the other, and a confused middle just wanting their lives back. Some even started wearing team colors, pink for Patricia, brown for Mark. Jake dubbed it the Great Silverstone Civil War, and his viewer count hit 1 million as people worldwide chose sides, but Patricia posted bail within 2 hours thanks to deep pockets and expensive lawyers, and unbelievably, she still wasn't ready to give up. Her new strategy was psychological warfare. She hired a mariachi band to play at 6 every morning, positioning them just outside my property line, but aimed directly at my ranch house. I responded by setting up industrial speakers, playing a mix of cow sounds and Jake's most annoying commentary clips at 3:a. Patricia tried using the HOA's public address system to denounce me. "Mark Sullivan is a terrible neighbor who doesn't care about our community," she announced during her daily rants. I countered with my own speaker system, broadcasting Jake's greatest hits. "Hey, Pat, did you ever find your shoes in the mud? Or are you still shopping for a lawyer who worked for free?" The sleep-deprived residents were at their breaking point. "Please just stop." They begged at another emergency meeting. Jake's streams had evolved into a daily soap opera with 500,000 regular viewers family. This isn't just drama anymore. Mark's gone full John Wick, but with property law. Instead of guns, the stream comets had become their own ecosystem team. Mark's supporters had created elaborate memes of Patricia as various villains, while her dwindling defenders tried to paint her as a misunderstood businesswoman. International viewers were particularly invested. A group in Australia had started a betting pool on how long until Patricia cracked completely. Someone in Norway sent me a traditional Viking helmet for the final battle. Japanese viewers created an anime-style opening credit sequence for Ranch Wars: The Patricia Saga, but the real impact was local. Businesses in town had started choosing sides. The coffee shop put up a sign, "We support property rights and clean water." The local hardware store offered me a discount on fencing supplies. Even the bank manager, usually neutral in all disputes, quietly informed me that Patricia had tried to get my accounts frozen. "Don't worry, Mr. Sullivan," he'd said. We know who actually owns their property around here. The pressure was building on Patricia from all sides. Her real estate connections were distancing themselves. The country club had mysteriously lost her membership renewal. Even her hairdresser suddenly had no appointments available. In a small town, social exile was worse than any legal penalty. She'd weaponized the community against me, only to find that weapon turned back on her with interest. The pressure finally forced a HOA vote. 30 out of 45 families signed a petition. Rowney Patricia Henderson as HOA president. The emergency board meeting was scheduled for that evening. Patricia tried every manipulation tactic in her playbook. If I resign, who's going to fight Sullivan? He's holding you all hostage. David Reynolds stood up slowly. Patricia, we don't need a HOA to be decent neighbors. We need you gone so we can actually talk to Mark like human beings instead of enemy combatants. The vote was closer than expected. 22 for removal, 23 for keeping her. Patricia won by a single vote, probably from supporters she'd bought or blackmailed. David Reynolds sat in his car with me, hands shaking. As he explained, I started recording everything. After Patricia threatened me 3 months ago, I questioned her about some missing HOA funds. At a board meeting next day, she shows up at my work with photos of me at a casino, perfectly legal adult entertainment. But she said she'd tell my ex-wife I had a gambling problem. Custody battle would start all over again. He pulled out a small
camera from his jacket. So I bought this recorded. Every meeting, every conversation, I knew she was dirty, but I had no idea how deep it went until I saw those emails. His voice cracked slightly. My kids mean everything to me, but watching my neighbors
suffer. While I stayed silent, I couldn't do it anymore. Patricia needs to be stopped, and I've got 3 months of evidence to help do it. But after the meeting, David approached me in the parking lot. I've been hacking into Patricia's emails, he said, quietly handing me a USB drive. You need to see this. She's been recording everything too, but not for protection, for profit. I plugged the drive into my laptop that night with Jake looking over my shoulder. Email after email revealed Patricia's true plan. The subject lines alone were damning. Silverstone acquisition, progress phase 1, complete Sullivan pressure campaign, update. I read the worst one aloud. Create conflict with Sullivan to establish hostile environment once he breaks. Acquire property at 30% market value. Current, 45 homes showing distress. Estimate, 50% will sell within 6 months. Phase 2, initiate operation. Clean sweep once Sullivan falls target. All 45 homes, estimated profit $50 million. Jake's hands were shaking as he filmed the screen. She's not just coming for you, Mark. She's planning to destroy everyone and buy up the whole neighborhood. But the real shock came when we heard sirens. Lots of them FBI vehicles were surrounding my ranch. Mark Sullivan, an agent, stepped out, badge visible. We need to talk about Patricia Henderson and Commissioner Grant. Seems you've stumbled onto something much bigger than a HOA dispute. This is it, the biggest live stream of my career, Jake announced, as he set up multiple cameras in the community center. Today we expose everything you thought Patricia would give up after federal charges. Think again. Family, this goes deeper than any of us imagined. I stood before the packed emergency meeting with David Reynolds beside me, both of us armed with laptops full of evidence. Every single household was represented, plus some federal agents in the back taking notes. Before we begin, I said, my voice carrying across the room, I want everyone to understand that what you're about to see isn't just about me versus Patricia. This is about all of us versus a conspiracy to steal our homes. The emails appeared on the projection screen. One by one, Patricia's partnership with Silverstone Shopping Plaza LLC was laid bare in her own words subject, Sullivan test case. Body blocking his gate worked perfectly. He's isolated and frustrated, ready for Phase 2, another email, the muddy field. Walks are breaking. Resident morale faster than expected. Estimate that 20% will list their homes within 30 days. The room erupted as people recognized their names in Patricia's correspondence. The Brooks are struggling with the commute target them. First, Jake Morrison's streams are problematic, but useful for documenting resident frustration. David Reynolds asking too many questions need leverage against him. A mother of 3 stood up, shaking with rage. My kids walk through mud for your profit scheme. An elderly veteran added, you made us miserable on purpose to force us to sell cheap. Patricia, who'd been forced to attend by court order, initially tried to maintain her composure. I saw a flicker of something guilt, fear cross her face as her neighbors turned on her. I was trying to improve the community, she stammered. Sometimes progress requires difficult decisions. But when confronted with an email where she called residents sheep too stupid to see the slaughter coming, she finally cracked, fine, yes, I wanted the money. Do you people have any
idea how much this land is worth? Millions? Millions? And you're all just sitting on it like idiots. Her mask had finally slipped completely. I spent my whole career making other people rich. This was supposed to be my turn, my success. But no, you all
want to play happy neighbors while sitting on a gold mine. Someone called the state attorney general's office while Patricia was still ranting. The call was placed by Sarah Walsh, a paralegal who lived in Unit 37. I need to report massive HOA fraud and conspiracy to manipulate property values. And she said calmly into her phone while Patricia continued screaming, yes, I'll hold for the fraud division. Patricia noticed Sarah on the phone and lunged toward her. Give me that phone, you don't
know what you're doing. 3 neighbors had to physically restrain her. I'm trying to save this community.
Patricia shrieked, you're all too stupid to see it. When she realized state investigators were actually coming, Patricia made a break for the door, but the mud field that had tormented residents for days became her enemy. 2, she made it about 50 feet before her designer heels sank into the muck. She fell forward, her cream-colored suit instantly ruined. Jake caught it all on camera, and the image of Patricia face down in mud, still screaming about property values, became the defining meme of the entire saga, The Fall of a HOA Empire. Jake titled it. Within hours, it had 2 million views, and counting. Within an hour, investigators were on site, seizing HOA computers and freezing bank accounts. Patricia's assets were locked down immediately. Pending investigation. The asset freeze hit Patricia harder than anyone expected. Within hours, her credit cards were declined at the grocery store. Jake happened to be there and caught it on camera. Folks, karma works fast. Patricia just got denied. Buying a $5 latte, her Tesla was repossessed the next day. The repo man doing his job while a crowd of neighbors watched. Someone started a slow clap. The ultimate humiliation came when the HOA's own bylaws, which Patricia had written, required the president to maintain financial good standing. With her accounts frozen, she was technically in violation of her own rules. But the real bombshell came from the forensic accountants. The HOA was broke, worse than broke. Patricia had been using HOA funds as her personal piggy bank, funding her lifestyle. While claiming it was for community improvement, that marble fountain at the entrance paid for with HOA money, but installed by a company she secretly owned, the expensive lawyer team billing triple rates to the HOA while kicking back 30% to Patricia. Every single resident had been unknowingly funding her scheme. She stole from us twice, Barbara Brooks said at the emergency meeting. First, our peace, then our money. And for what? So she could play queen of a neighborhood built on lies. The HOA itself was broke, drained by legal fees. And Patricia's embezzlement, the residents, finally understanding the full scope of what had happened, turned to me with a mixture of shame and desperation.
Mark, we were wrong, so wrong, please. Can we work something out? I let them stew for 24 hours, not out of cruelty, but to let the lessons sink in the next morning. I called a meeting at the fence line that had started it all. Here's my offer, I announced.
The assembled crowd, the HOA dissolves permanently. No reformation, no exceptions. I'll grant a legal easement for road access at $100 per month, per household. That's below market rate, and you all know it. The relief was palpable, but I raised my hand for silence if anyone even mentions forming a new HOA. This fence goes back up within 2 hours, and I have the legal right to do it. Are we crystal clear? The crowd shouted their agreement. We don't need a HOA. Someone yelled. David Reynolds added, we never did. We just needed to stop letting bullies tell us how to live. Sheriff Bradley, who'd been watching from his cruiser, nodded approvingly. That's what I've been saying for years. Good neighbors don't need a rule book. They just need common sense and basic decency. The signing ceremony took place right there. At the fence line, 45 families lined up to sign the HOA dissolution papers and the easement agreements. It was like watching people sign their own freedom declarations. Just as the last signature was completed, Patricia arrived with a convoy of lawyers. This is false imprisonment, defamation, conspiracy. I'll sue every last one of you into bankruptcy. Sheriff Bradley stepped out of his cruiser with several federal agents. Patricia Henderson, you're under arrest again, this time for fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, water source contamination, and about 12 other charges. And this time your bail has been revoked. As they led her away, Patricia turned back. One last time, her perfectly composed mask was completely gone now, Sullivan, she screamed. You want to know who else is in on this, Commissioner? Granny's done this to 3 other neighborhoods. Check his bank account then. In
a moment of complete breakdown, she added in a smaller voice, I just wanted to succeed. Just once. Why does everyone else get to win except me? I could have let it end there. I told Jake's camera a week later, Patricia was going to prison. The
HOA was dead, and my neighbors were free, but 3 other neighborhoods, I couldn't let that slide. Sometimes you've got to see things through to the end. Jake nodded enthusiastically. This is the final boss fight, family, Commissioner Grant thought. He was untouchable, spoiler alert. He wasn't. The investigation into Commissioner Grant revealed a pattern that made Patricia look like an amateur. Over 3 years, he'd helped orchestrate similar schemes in 3 other HOA communities, always with the same playbook: create conflict, tank property values, force sales, and collect kickbacks from developers. The FBI asked me to wear a wire and meet with Grant, who'd reached out after Patricia's arrest. We met at a local bar where he apparently felt comfortable discussing his crimes. Patricia's in jail, but you can still make a deal with me, Grant said, sliding a beer across the table. I've got connections. Influence, this can all go away. What kind of deal? I asked, making sure the wire picked up. Everything, sell your ranch, 500.
CO drew cash, no questions asked, or he let the threat hang in the air. I played dumb, or what more, poisoned? Wells, Grant laughed. Sullivan, you have no idea how this works. I've been doing this for 3 years. 4 neighborhoods, millions in profit. These local idiots never see it coming. They think their little HOAs protect them, but I own those.
HOAs? He leaned in closer, his voice dropping. Patricia was sloppy, got emotional. I told her to go slow, but she wanted revenge on you for some reason. Made it personal. that was her mistake. Grant pulled out his phone, scrolling through photos like a proud parent. See this Bentley paid for by Riverside Estates, this yacht that was Maple Grove's contribution, and this mansion in Aspen, let's just say Willow Creek, was very generous. He showed me spreadsheets on his phone. Henderson was small time. She wanted one neighborhood. I've got a whole system. Fire department needs new equipment. I vote no roads, need repair, delayed. Then, when everyone's desperate, my developer friends swoop in with solutions. Everyone thinks I'm the hero. He actually laughed at his own genius. The beauty is all technically legal, unethical. Sure, but try proving conspiracy when everyone's following proper procedures. Patricia just got sloppy, made it personal with you. That was her mistake. So the water contamination I prompted.
Effective, right? Grant smirked. Amazing. What people will do when they're desperate. Property values tank overnight. When word gets out about poisoned wells, though between you and me, hiring that septic company was amateur hour. I've got better methods.
The FBI agents moved in. Fast. Grant barely had time to process what was happening before he was face down on the bar floor. Federal agents, you're under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, and racketeering. The bar erupted in chaos, but Jake kept filming from across the room. Fatality, he shouted. Boss defeated, justice wins again. Grant and the CEO of Silverstone Shopping Plaza LLC were both arrested that night. The subsequent investigation revealed the full scope of their crimes: $15 million in fraudulent property acquisitions across 3 years. But the real victory came during Patricia's trial, facing decades in federal prison. She decided to flip on everyone involved. Her testimony exposed the entire network, leading to dozens more arrests. The prosecutor read out the list of assets to be liquidated for victim compensation. One residential property in Silverstone Estates, valued at $2.5 million, that was Patricia's mansion. The auction took place 2 weeks later. I sat in the front row, watching Patricia's former home go on the block. When the auctioneer called for bids, I stood up, slowly, looked at the gathered crowd, then held up a single finger. No dollar, I announced clearly. The room fell silent. Nobody else dared bid against me. Going once, going twice, sold to Mr. Sullivan for $1. The crowd erupted in cheers and applause. Within hours, I'd installed a new sign on Patricia's former mansion, future home of Cluckukee Revenge Chicken Sanctuary, where happy chickens live in luxury. Jake was beside himself with joy. Family Mark just bought a $2.5 million mansion for $1, and he's turning it into a chicken paradise. You can't make this stuff up. But the best part was setting up webcams throughout the property. Patricia's marble bathroom is now a nesting room, I explained to Jake's viewers. Her walk-in closet, that's where we keep the fancy breed chickens, and her home theater, perfect for brooding hens. The live stream of chickens living in Patricia's former luxury home became an instant sensation, drawing millions of viewers who found poetic justice in every feathered resident. The mansion tour became Jake's most watched video. Ever welcome to MTV Cribs Chicken Edition, he announced. Camera following a particularly fat hen named Dolly. This is Patricia's former master's suite, now home to 27 free-range layers. Notice the custom Italian marble they're pooping on. That's $50,000 of flooring. Right there, the walk-in closet had been converted to nesting boxes. Each designer purse shelf now holds 2 happy hens that Hermes display. Case premium egg. Storage comments poured in from around the world. Viewers from Japan sent origami chickens. Germans created techno remixes of the chickens clucking. A French chef offered to buy the mansion eggs at premium prices. Even celebrities got involved. A famous actress tweeted, "This is better than any reality show." The chickens became international symbols of justice, served sunny side up. "Hey, Mark," Jake said as we watched the chickens explore their new home. "What do you think Patricia's doing right now?" I smiled, probably watching this from her jail cell TV. "Hope she enjoys the show." Jake turned to his camera one last time. 3 years later, family Patricia's out on parole, and our next chapter, well, let's just say her first day at her new job, was interesting. Silverstone Estates. 3 years after the Great Fence incident. No HOA, no drama. Just neighbors. Being neighbors, the community organized monthly barbecues in what used to be the HOA meeting hall, now converted into a genuine community center. My ranch had become the unofficial heart of the neighborhood, with kids learning to ride horses where corporate developers once plotted to destroy everything. The Cucky's Revenge Chicken Sanctuary was thriving, with webcam subscribers from around the world watching formerly abused chickens living their best lives in a mansion. Jake's channel had exploded to 5 million subscribers, and his Where Are They Now? HOA edition series was his most popular content, but the real story was about to unfold at the local Walmart. I was doing my weekly shopping grabbing feed for both cattle and chickens. When I reached the checkout lane, the cashier had her back, turned organizing bags. When she turned around, we both froze. It was Patricia Henderson, looking 20 years older than when I'd last seen her, wearing a blue Walmart vest with a name tag that said, "Pat, happy to help." The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Other shoppers began to notice the tension, some recognizing both of us from Jake's videos. "Sullivan," she said quietly. Her voice, nothing like the commanding shriek I remembered. "Henderson," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. Her hands shook slightly as she began scanning my items. Halfway through, she stopped and looked up at me. Her eyes were wet with unshed tears. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." The words came out in a rush. I lost everything, my money, my reputation, my friends, and I deserved it, every bit of it. I studied her face, seeing genuine remorse. For the first time, the arrogant HOA president who'd poisoned my well and tried to steal my land was gone. In her place stood a broken woman who'd finally learned the cost of greed. "Everyone deserves a second chance, Pat," I said finally. "But if you ever even think about forming a HOA," her reaction was immediate and almost comical. "No, never."
"I promise I've learned my lesson." She actually shuddered at the mention of those 3 letters. I reached into my cart and pulled out a dozen eggs from Cucky's Revenge. They were the premium organic ones laid by chickens, now living in what used
to be her master bedroom. "These are from your old house," I said, placing them on the counter. "The chickens are very happy there. They especially love your former jacuzzi tub." "Take them, neighbor?" Discount Patricia stared at the eggs, then at me, then back.
At the eggs, suddenly she burst into tears right there at Register 3, causing quite a scene. Her supervisor rushed over concerned, but Patricia waved her away. "No, it's okay," she sobbed. "These are good tears, karma tears." As I left the store, I could hear her telling her coworker, "That man taught me the most valuable lesson of my life. You can't build happiness by destroying others." Jake had filmed the entire encounter from the produce section. His video, titled "The Day Patricia Henderson Finally Got It," became his most watched ever. The comment section was divided between those calling for forgiveness and those thinking I'd been too kind. 6 months later, Patricia was promoted to shift manager. She'd become known as the fairest boss in the store. Never power tripping, always helping employees with their schedules. Someone asked her about her management style. In a local news piece about second chances, I learned the hard way that real leadership isn't about control. She said it's about service. I spent 3 years trying to control everyone around me and ended up in federal prison. Now I just try to help people have a better day. Patricia's transformation was remarkable to witness,
when young cashier dropped a full register drawer instead of the explosion. Everyone expected Pat calmly helped pick up the scattered bills. "Accidents happen," she said gently. "I once destroyed a $50,000 fountain because I thought I knew better than the contractor. This is just money. It can be counted again." Her employees started sharing stories. "She covered my shift when my kid was sick." One said, "Didn't make me feel guilty about it either." Another added, "She fought corporate to get us better break room chairs, said she understood how important comfort was after standing all day." The woman who'd once fined neighbors for grass being half an inch too tall now advocated for human dignity. "In retail, everyone deserves respect," she'd tell new hires. "I learned that the hard way, the very, very hard way." The reporter asked if she learned anything else from her experience. Patricia looked directly at the camera. "Don't mess with cowboys, especially ones who know their property rights." The piece included footage of Silverstone Estates, today a thriving community without a HOA where neighbors actually talked to each other and solved problems with conversation instead of citations. Children played freely in yards. Without fear of violation, notices people painted their houses whatever colors they wanted. It was ironically everything Patricia had claimed to want when she first became HOA president, a beautiful, valuable neighborhood she just hadn't understood. That beauty comes from freedom. Not control. The final shot of Jake's documentary showed the entrance to Silverstone Estates, where once an imposing HOA sign had stood, declaring all the rules and regulations. Now there was a simple wooden sign, Sylvans, crossing a free community. No HOA, no drama underneath. In smaller letters, "Fence goes up in 2 hours if anyone tries to start one." As I stood at my ranch gate, the same gate where Patricia had started this whole mess with her Parlet property sign, I reflected on the journey. My grandfather's words echoed in my mind. "This is your legacy." Sonny was right, but not just about the land. The real legacy was showing a community that they didn't need to live under anyone's thumb. They just needed to be good neighbors. Jake's final voiceover summed it up perfectly, and that, my friends, is how one man with a property deed and a sense of justice took down an entire corrupt system. Patricia learned her lesson. Grant went to federal prison, and 45 families learned that freedom tastes better than any HOA rules ever could. The video faded to black, with one final message. Patricia Henderson now volunteers at the local animal shelter every weekend. She's particularly good with the chickens. True story. And somewhere in Silverstone Estates, former HOA president Patricia Henderson was learning that the best revenge isn't served cold. Sometimes it's served with a side of humility, a dozen organic eggs, and the hard one, knowledge that power over others is nothing compared to peace with yourself. The gate to my ranch stands open now, welcoming neighbors who come to learn riding, buy eggs, or just chat about life, without looking over their shoulders for violation. Notices, because in the end, that's what this whole fight was really about, the freedom to live without someone else's boot on your neck. And if anyone ever tries to form a HOA again, well, I've still got that fence contractor on speed dial 2 hours. That's all it would take. But somehow I don't think I'll need to. Some lessons once learned tend to stick especially.